Yes, we are live. I hope you guys can hear me out. I hope you guys can hear me. Great, great, great. He's gonna join us. He's about to join us rather. So please, guys, share this live as much as possible because, again, as I said, we rarely get a chance to actually connect with someone as big of a legend like him. So yeah, he's over here with us. I'm just gonna quickly add him.
There we go. Oh,
There
a bit too high. Let's put you down a bit.
A bit more. There we go. Okay.
Hi. Good afternoon, sir.
Can you see me?
That's an
Can
afternoon for
hear me?
you.
Good
Yeah,
afternoon.
we can see you. We can hear you.
Yeah. It's all this technology. It's new. It's different. We've been doing many interviews, but usually by Zoom. This is the first one we've done using the phone and the Instagram. So we're learning every day.
Surely, surely. I hope you're doing well and you and your family is doing well in this whole pandemic, sir.
Oh yes, we're okay. We're tucked away in the middle of France. We're really in a rural area. Nobody around us, so it's very quiet, and we're doing okay. Thank you very much. And I do hope you are as well, because it's all over the world. It's a global problem. But hope
Yes,
you're
sir.
good. Good.
Uh, yeah, sir. So first of all, I would really like to thank you for doing this, sir, because obviously we rarely get a chance to connect with someone like you, someone as big of a legend like you. And definitely, it's not just about me or the platform, but it's a very big thing for the entire community. I'm sure you must have seen the sort of response to the story reshares and stuff like that. So it's definitely a very big thing for the entire community.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me. It's big for me as well. It's nice to talk to India. Lovely. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. So yeah, I think let's just get into it because definitely we are also like kind of short on time. So definitely we all know where Reebok stands today, and the sort of journey it has had through throughout these years. But what was the initial plan, like when you and Jeff are probably like planning to build a brand, and obviously at the time it was supposed to be called Mercury. So what was the initial plan with this whole brand?
Well, when Jeff and I left the the family business, which was J.W. Foster and Sons, we set up our own company, our new company, in the next town, just a few miles down the road. And we did name it Mercury Sports Footwear. And just some 18 months later, I'm getting feedback here. I can hear myself. Some 18 months later, our fledgling company was advised that we should register our name. And the reason is the accountant said, well, if you don't register your name, somebody else starts making shoes in the name of Mercury, you could be in trouble. It'd be difficult to stop them. So I went off to see an agent and say, look, we need to register our name Mercury. And he checked it and said, well, sorry, but it's already pre-registered. I think the name of the company was Lotus and Delta, which was a British shoe corporation. They offered the name to us for £1,000. But in those days, £1,000 was just way, way beyond our means. So he said to me, well, you've got to find another name, but don't bring me one name. You need to bring me 10 names. And then we can check them with the register and see which ones you can have. And he pointed through the window of his office, and he pointed to a sign outside, which was Kodak. And I said, why Kodak? And he said, well, it doesn't mean anything. It's just their name. It's made up. So we went back. We went through sitting down, doing all names. Lots of birds, lots of animals. But in 1943, when I was age 8, during the war, World War II, I won a race, and the prize for winning that race was a dictionary. And the dictionary was a Webster's dictionary. Now, Webster's dictionary is an American dictionary, not in English. It's an American dictionary. So I thought, well, I'll look in the dictionary. I like the letter R. I thought the letter R sounded really good, nice, strong letter. And I'm leafing through the dictionary, and I come across Reebok, R-E-E-B-O-K, small South African gazelle. Gazelle, brilliant. That sounds just right for us, a gazelle. So I went back to the to our agent and said, look, we've got to be in love with this name. We've really got to have the passion for it. And that's the one we want. We want Reebok. It so happened the only one out of the 10 that came through was Reebok. So that's how we became Reebok.
Sure. And the spelling of the name was also different. I'm assuming it was R-H-E something, right?
Well, had it been an English dictionary, it would have been R-H-B-O-K, whereas the American spelling was R-W-B-O-K. I don't think it would have been as attractive, the R-H-B-O-K, R-H-E-B-O-K. I don't think that would have been attractive. So we're very glad. That's a nice piece of luck for us. We, as an American dictionary, we had to change our name. So now we're Reebok.
Sure. So definitely, like, as far as this whole sportswear industry goes, Reebok was probably the first brand to actually get the global recognition in the whole, the sneaker world and the whole footwear world, if we may say, from the sportswear perspective. So what do you think made that happen? Was there a specific silhouette? Was there a specific sneaker? Or there was some sort of a marketing campaign which probably happened, or what?
Well, it's getting very near to the end of my time with Reebok, this, when we became really global. What happened is that the running shoe that Aztec had really got us into America. Once we were in America, we were then selling nicely. But one of the tech reps down in Los Angeles, that was Angel Martinez. His wife, Frankie, she was going to these new classes, aerobic classes, with her girlfriends, and they were coming back and they were full of it. They loved it, enjoyed it. And so Arnold thought, I'll just have a look at this. And he went down there, he went to the class, saw the instructor. The instructor was wearing running shoes, and half the class were wearing running shoes. The other half, nothing. They were just bare feet. So he thought, well, why don't we make a shoe specifically for aerobics? And it's got to be soft, got to be very comfortable, nice and cushioned. So he went back up to Paul Fireman at that time, and he said to Paul, look, there's this nice new aerobics thing going on down in Los Angeles. We should look at it and we should make shoes for it. Paul didn't want to know. Paul said, no. We've just got our running shoes going now over here. The tray's nice. We're growing nicely. We don't want to be playing around making old shoes for somebody down there in Los Angeles. Arnold wasn't satisfied with that. Arnold went round his back, and he went to the production people, and he asked them to make him 200 pairs of a nice, light, all-white shoe out of glove leather, specifically for aerobics. They made him 200 pairs. He gave them to the instructors down there in some of the classes, and all of a sudden, it went wild. We had a shoe. And the difference was that Reebok had been on the market in America about 2 years. In the running market, we were not known like Adidas or like Puma, who were male, sweaty. All of a sudden, this nice new brand was picked up by women, and we became a woman's brand. And it wasn't for men, this was for women. And we were down in Los Angeles, where, of course, we were picked up by the A-listers, film stars and whatever. And from there on, it grew, and it grew tremendously. I mean, the company went from about $9 million to $30 million to $90 million to $300 million. And then $900 million, all in successive years. This is what actually exploded the company onto the market. And it grew from there to, well, when I left in the end of 1989, it was 3.8 billion, and most of that was aerobic shoes, the big bulk, and it had been created by women. So that was the phenomena that took Reebok global, became a global brand.
Sure. So definitely, since we are obviously talking about the sneakers that made this whole revolutionizing sort of a thing for the sportswear industry. According to you, what are like the three best silhouettes that Reebok has ever designed or Reebok has ever come up? Obviously, Aztec being one of them, since you like mentioned it earlier also and on one of our posts also.
Well, yes. I mean, we've got to put it on that Aztec has got to be the number one, right? By far and above, because the story which is in the book really leads me through 11 years of trying to get into the American market. And it was Aztec that did it. So Aztec has got to be number one. But then when you move away from Aztec, the next thing, of course, that really exploded the company was the freestyle for aerobics. So freestyle aerobics, that has to be another one which you have to put up there on the stand and say, wow, that's a special shoe. And then something that was different was the pump. I think when the pump came out, I think that was, again, something totally different from what was on the market. So for me, those would be the three shoes that stand out in Reebok's, not only its growth, in fact, the creation of Reebok, if you like. So just those three shoes.
Sure. But usually it's said like, from someone who's probably building a brand or for someone who's looking at more sort of like the commercial side of things, there's always a tiff between the creative people and the designers and the commercial people, right? According to you, was there any specific silhouette that you felt, from a commercial perspective that might not have done, that could not have done well in the market, but eventually did wonders?
Well, I think really, again, we must talk about the pump, but the pump fury. The pump fury put the bladder on the outside of the shoe. And for me, it was like, it didn't look right. But of course, it was so unique, so different, and so quirky that it had a cult following. And that cult following really, again, was a difference that, a designer. And the designer's there to push things to the limit. They're there to test and try new things. So, sometimes there is a bit of a disagreement between sort of sales and design. But and I think that did test the salespeople initially as to what is this. But of course, it just, I can say, it became a cult and sold such a lot. It was a great shoe.
Yeah, it still is a cult. It's still selling out.
It is still selling. Yes, it is.
There are so many collaborations that happen only with Insta pumps.
Pardon?
Yeah. There are still so many collaborations that still happen like with Insta pumps.
Oh yes.
Like we've recently seen a couple of them. Definitely.
That's right. I think
so
that's the beauty. It will continue. It's a shoe that will continue to be just a staple. Absolutely, it will continue to sell. No question.
For sure. But yeah, definitely. If we're talking about Reebok, there's no chance that we cannot talk about the Reebok Swift. So what do you think about that sneaker? That's definitely, I think, one of the sneakers that revolutionized the whole running sneaker game.
Well, we had so many shoes that were outstanding. And so I don't think Swift was that big an exception for me. And it was actually on the market after I'd retired. So maybe it impresses you more. But for me, I mean, I had so many shoes and so many things that really built Reebok. And Swift was just another one of the shoes for me. But as you say, it obviously made a big impression.
Yeah, so because I think that was like probably the first running shoe that had like those spikes and everything in place. Right. So, and that's something that you guys came up with, and that definitely made a different mark in the whole market.
Right. But I mean, again, I'm saying there's so many shoes that made a different mark and got us to where we are, or where we got to. But Swift didn't stand out in particular for me. You know, maybe it was more in America or, like you say, in India. I don't know. But and again, I had retired by that time, so I wasn't seeing the latest innovations.
Sure. Uh, Definitely when it comes to, collaborations, Reebok has always been path-breaking. That there was a time when it was not really expected for Reebok to come up with a collaboration with the likes of Jay-Z and the likes of 50 Cent, right? But it did happen and it did wonders. Of course, as the news goes and the numbers goes, it was said to be somewhere around an $80 million to about $100 million sort of a deal that eventually turned up with the 50 Cent G units. That's like those from a numbers perspective, everyone knows about that. Everyone can research about that. But what was it like while you were probably planning that sort of a collaboration, or what was probably happening behind the curtains?
Well, this was really done in America, and Paul Feynman was growing the brand, and he had a good marketing team. So these are the sort of things that got left to the marketing team. My role at that time, I was out there just growing the brand globally. I was putting on distribution. I was doing it. By this time, the company was so big that you're not in contact with all the pieces. You just know that one of the pieces is good. And for me, it was with Paul. We had an arrangement. I said, Paul, you look after America. Do whatever it is to grow the brand. And as it grows, that influence will be tremendous for us. It will go around the world. And it'll make my job a lot easier, going around the world, putting on distribution. So this was an American phenomenon. They were all Americans that really were done with collaborations. And it was no different than the influencers that we had used before. It's just a different name. The influence was usually part of sport. And I think the collaborations, although we have some really good collaborations within the sport, but now collaborations can be anything, entertainers, wherever. So all these collaborations are growing. And like you said, with 50 Cent and Jay-Z, they were entertainers. They were not in the sports trade. And that was something that the marketing people in America decided they could pick up on and help develop and influence the brand, which it did. So, I mean, it was tremendous to see it happening. And it did so much so that the rest of the world were happy to buy the brand. Everybody looked at America. And as far as I was concerned, whilst they were doing such a good job, my job was easy.
Sure. No, definitely. As we're probably talking about collaborations, according to you, what's your favorite collaboration that Reebok has had ever, since the initial days?
Well, I think mine would go back to the early days when it was Shaquille O'Neal. So, and Shaq is still part of the company.
Yes,
and Allen Iverson also. I mean, there's a couple of legends there as far as I'm concerned, and they're still involved with the company. And to me, those were the big ones. Because Reebok have done so many, with music and wherever you want to be. But collaborations now, and the latest one, of course, is Cardi B.
The Cardi B,
it's incredible. And this is what involves street, because if you really want to sell volume, you've got to influence the street. And now sport influences the street more than it's ever done at any time. And everything now has a sports influence, which is which is the way to get the volumes.
Sure. Is there anything else besides the Iversons and the Shaq Nosses and everything? Is there anything else, besides obviously the recent one being the Cardi B being the biggest one?
Well, of course, they've done Wonder Woman, Gal Gadot.
Yeah, Gal Gadot.
Is good. There's Gigi Hadid, who, of course, is a super model over there. And, of course, we have Victoria Beckham, because that's a nice relationship, being a British brand. So, it goes on. And, yes, they're good. It's good for the brand.
Sure. And what about Walktober? Walktober is literally like a phenomena. right? It's definitely, for you, it must have been like really overwhelming to see like people celebrating Reebok for an entire month. So what do you think? How did that all started, and wherever it's leading through? What do you feel about that?
Well, I have no idea how it started, but I think it's pretty sure it's to do with the internet. And it's pretty sure, I mean, like we are doing now, everything now, you have Facebook, Instagram, you've got LinkedIn and Twitter. And there's a lot of people out there. They're quite clever people. They invent ideas. And once it's seen by somebody, all of a sudden everybody picks it up. It's just like Team Reebok 1895, TR 1895. It's a group of people, nothing to do with Reebok, but TR 1895 is now growing and growing and growing. And you see a lot of the comments. They're just followers of Reebok. They just love the brand. And I think with October, it's people like that. People have just said, "Oh, October, Reebok." Somebody connected it, and
Yeah.
once they connected it, it just went global, as it is now. So every year now we have October,
Yeah.
which is good. It's interesting, and those things will continue, I'm sure.
Sure. So there was this very recent story, which was like kind of weird for us also to actually go through and to see through. There was this story wherein you actually wanted to get hands on a specific Reebok sneaker, but you could not get that.
Right.
And then eventually, I think Sneaker Grandpa, who's actually Patrick Dempsey, he came through, and there was some sort of stuff that was happening around, and then he made sure that you actually got one. So what was that whole story all about?
Well, it's very interesting because these were Club C. They were Eric Emanuel, and they were collab in a purple color. And Julie, my wife, said, "You should get one of those." And I agreed. I said, "Why not?" And yeah, Patrick did this shout out. And we put it on with like this pair of shoes. Patrick did shout out. And so many people started searching out for the shoe. And it was SNS, sneakers and stuff.
Okay.
They,
Sneakers and
they
stuff.
managed to find a pair for me. And but it was brilliant. So many people had sort of stepped up to the mark and said, "Yes, we can. We'll look for you." So I really want to thank all those people who stepped up and made it possible for us to find this pair of shoes. And I now have them. They're in the box, still in the box, because we have collab. We have the COVID. And COVID,
Yeah.
of course, we can't go very far with COVID. So they're still in the box waiting for this opportunity to wear them. Yes, but I do appreciate everybody's efforts. It was really great.
Yeah, it became a phenomena in itself because it was pretty weird for everyone who's probably a follower of Reebok and your follower as well. It was pretty weird to find that the founder of Reebok could not get hold of a silhouette like that. I'm sure there's nothing as there can be nothing what can be as exclusive as something to for you not to get your hands on, specifically when it's Reebok.
Well, I do remember when I was in a position similar at the head of Reebok, and people would say, "Can you get me this shoe?" And I'd be saying, "Look, it's easier. I'll give you a code, and you'll get a discount, but go through the system, because for me to try and get them, it's impossible. I'm trying to get them. We have the office. The office is here, and we're marketing, sales, we're whatever the company is, and the distribution and the production are many miles away. And to just ask them for a pair to come here, it's difficult. It doesn't work. It surprisingly doesn't
Yeah.
work. When we were a small company, we had our own factory. And if somebody asked me for a pair of shoes, I just walked down into the factory, picked up a pair of shoes, and that was it. It was easy. But now it's not that easy, not at all. Unless you have a retail shop. And in America, they did have a retail shop. I don't know. Yes, they do have a retail shop. I think they still do have a retail shop. And that's okay. But these one-off collaborations, they tend to be sold out wherever they are. Nothing ever comes into the shop in Boston. And
Yeah.
I don't know if they have a shop in the UK, but it is so difficult, and it's surprising. We do have links with people in the USA, links with people, but if that particular shoe hasn't come in, and not every shoe comes into their hands, it's just it's just impossible. So it's great when you've got people who will who will search them out for you. Yeah, it was very useful. That very useful.
Yeah. So I'm sure this is something that a lot of people would love to know and would love to get your reviews out, on. Is actually Adidas taking over Reebok? And why I ask this from you is obviously like Reebok is your baby. You've built it with your own hands. You've seen it go through thicks and thins and everything. But definitely there are a lot of people who love the brand, but lately they've seen or they probably feel that Reebok might have lost its identity in this whole gyre of, all these brands coming in and going. So what do you think about that? And that's a specific thing which probably a lot of us have seen post Adidas took the rights of Reebok.
Well, I think if we go back to when Adidas did buy Reebok, and I had been retired for quite a number of years. I retired at the end of 1989. Adidas bought Reebok in 2005. And we know that Adidas bought Reebok to give Adidas momentum in the United States. And it did. That was wonderful. So you can't blame them for that. That was their intention, to get some momentum. And they paid a lot of money for it. But when they got this growth, and they grew very well, but Reebok just was put to one side. And Reebok didn't really get any vision or any attention. And it was just left to be whatever. And I think what has struck Adidas once they've grown to a certain size is, well, what do we do with Reebok? We've got it here. It still has a following. There's still demand. And the problem is when they bought Reebok, and I don't know whether the people who buy things think they should do it, but they changed the letter styling on the name, and they put Delta on the side, so they changed the silhouette. And when you do that, you take away a lot of the purpose for a brand.
Yep.
You take away its identity, and as you said, it's losing identity. Well, over the last 3 or 4 years, I think it's a bit more than 4 years, they've done brilliantly in setting up an archive. So they now have an archive, which Reebok should have done years ago. And maybe that's my fault. Maybe I should have started with setting up an archive. But now we have an archive in Boston, which is brilliant. And a lot of stuff that I had, most of the stuff was in my attic and around, I've sent over to Boston, because in time, those sort of things get lost. But the archive will now keep them precise. And what they've also done in this last 12 months is that they've changed back to the old silhouette, the old style. We now have the Vector, and we have the original style of Reebok. We have the Mototech Tura with the dropped R, and they've pushed away all the other bits and pieces. In marketing terms, that should never have changed in the first place. You should keep your identity. Yes. You only need to look at Ford cars, and Ford have that oval, and Ford written in the way it was written 100 years ago plus, still that. Yes. And this is the identity you don't want to change. And even Adidas have not changed the 3 stripes.
Yes.
They have changed their identity slightly over the years, but essentially it's been the same. And
True.
Now they've got Reebok back to this, and they're starting now, as we say, with collaborations and some influencers with Gal Gadot and with the other influencers. Which I think that they could find a return. But why do Adidas want to sell? I think it's because Adidas know very well, you know very well, what Adidas could do to make Reebok grow. We all know. But it's a competition. It's being in competition with itself. And I believe they've just bought Puma now. So I don't know how they're going to handle Puma.
Yep.
And they've put too much of Reebok as part of the Adidas group. It's too much of that. I mean, yes, you can take it and grow your brand, but then you should have Adidas and you should have Reebok. And if you've got Puma, you should have Puma. And you should be above that and letting them all grow. You can control how much they fight, but you should allow the growth. And so what I think now is when Adidas bought Reebok, Reebok needed a change of management. It was stagnating.
Yeah.
It had lost its impetus. It had lost something. And so to have Adidas buy Reebok, okay, one couldn't be too enthusiastic because he knew that this was to grow Adidas. But I think they've got to a point now where they have to make a decision. They have to make a decision. Do we allow Reebok to grow in the way we know it can do? And it's got a big history. We know the history goes back to 1895. It's a tremendous history, and it's a performance history. And, you know, they're trying to put Reebok into fitness brand. Well, it's okay, but you don't get the opportunities to see. You don't get the visibility from being a fitness brand. You need to be a performance brand, and you need to have spectators. So, you know, if you're a spectator, like football, you see it everywhere. It's on television, and so you see repetitively either Adidas or Nike. But fitness, you don't see the name Reebok coming up. So you've got to give Reebok something where its name can be seen, and you know, get the visibility. It will get visibility on the internet through people like Cardi B and that, but not everybody is watching the internet. Whereas on your newspapers, on your television, live, you've got to see that performance sport. So that's where Reebok needs to be returning to. Now, the problem for Adidas is, do they do that? Because they make for themselves a competition. But at least they could control that competition if they retain the brand. If they sell the brand, they run the risk that somebody else will start to build the brand again. So I think it's a good time for Reebok right now. I think the time is good. And if the book does well, we're going to give a bit more visibility. We're going to bring back a bit of interest. And in fact, only yesterday I was talking with Reebok France, and it's to get some passion back into the people who run it. They need that passion. If you've not got the passion, you can't be. You can't grow a brand again. If it's just a job, you've got to enjoy it. It's got to be fun. And you know, it was always fun for me, always. And I moved out because the company got big, and there were lots of lawyers, lots of accountants running the company. Yeah. And for me, it was time that I'd done my journey, and I'd enjoyed my journey. Fantastic journey. Not that I feel I've finished, because we have a book now to get to #1. And so that's my latest journey. But yes, I think the Adidas situation will be played out. You know, it will be something else. Oh, I've just got to note here that Puma is owned by Artemis. I don't know who Artemis is, but
okay,
not Adidas. Anyway, it doesn't matter. The thing is that I think Adidas have to make a choice now, either to sell, and I hope, and I know there are a few people looking at it. I know even Shaq O'Neal wanted to buy it.
okay.
As part of the company there.
Now that would be great.
Well, wouldn't it be great? You know, I think it would be great, because I don't think Adidas have anything to worry about. I think that the football market is a very difficult and a very expensive market to get into, and I think that Nike and Adidas have that now. They have the big grip on it. Both are well over 20 billion in revenues. So, you know, to get in there, you're going to pay an awful lot of money to get your influencers to buy people like Manchester United or Liverpool or any of the big teams in Europe. So for me, that's where we are. And being an optimist, I am excited at the thought that Adidas have to make a decision now.
Sure. So a lot of people are actually saying that Reebok should be independent again. Do you think so? Like completely independent would work the best for the brand?
Completely would be the best for the brand if we have people who have the real interest in the brand, and they've got to feel for it. They've got to get the right people running the brand. Something that I think was wrong with Reebok when it sold. I don't think that the management should have changed earlier. There should have been more involved management. I stepped back when I was 55, and possibly Paul Feynman should have stepped back a little earlier, but it didn't happen. And now let's see if we can. Well, it's a very strong brand. It's a very strong name. Has a very good following, and has a lot of history. And the book tells the history right from my grandfather in 1895, and from what I hear, people are enjoying reading the book. So we seem to have a good book. Let's hope the combination of Adidas not knowing or will sell, and the book will give a that extra bit of a growth to the brand.
True. I've read the book. Honestly, it's great. We're definitely gonna talk more about it.
Thank you.
Uh, yeah, we're definitely gonna talk more about it. So there are just a couple of questions that a lot of people are going through, and yeah. So someone just asked, like, obviously, it's a huge difference to probably start a brand today than it was probably back in the day when you guys started off. So someone just asked, is there anything that you would like to tell anyone who's probably interested in doing so?
In becoming involved in the brand, in
Yeah, and starting their own brand.
well, from when we started, which is many years ago,
Yeah,
you are then, and you're classed as an entrepreneur, you were young. And I think if you want to start your own brand, be young. Don't try to start it when you know too much. I think it's good not to know too much. But if you are starting a brand, you have to be passionate about it. You really have to become that brand. It has to be you. And if you're passionate enough about it, you will succeed. But these days, we're looking at technology. Technology has moved on. And we know now that selling a brand, selling your product, technology is really a major part. We're talking now many thousands of miles. I used to have to jump on a plane and travel and meet people and discuss, and that's how I had to grow the brand. Now we can grow the brand by using the influences of technology. But the one thing, if you know too much, you need an awful lot of money to get where Reebok got. Maybe not everybody wants to get that size. But if you do, things will happen. You'll probably have to give part of your company. You have to be ready for that. And
yes,
you may have to give all your company. Depends whether money is your biggest motivation or whether the thrill, the enjoyment of building a brand. For me, building a brand, we see Reebok everywhere. We saw it everywhere. We became number one. We overtook Nike. We overtook Adidas, and became the number one brand before I left. And sadly, it's not stayed there. But it is a choice, and people don't have a choice. But to get there, you've got to go through a lot. It took me 31 years for Reebok to become famous overnight. It's
yeah,
it takes a long time. But all I can say is, if you have the desire and the passion,
yes.
go ahead. Don't ask too many questions. Just go ahead.
Yes. Like even in India, if I may say, like I'm not sure whether you know about this or not, but for India, Reebok was probably the biggest international brand that got recognized, and anyone and everyone was willing to get their hands on one or the other pair. And Reebok was that actually, because back in the day, besides Reebok, it was only I think Converse which was in place in India specifically, which was kind of recognized amongst the masses and not just the sneaker community. Definitely, like sneaker community as a whole would be like pretty violating for me to even say, because back in the day there was no such thing in India.
Right.
But yeah, when we just talk about something as a piece of footwear, international brands, speaking of them, it was only and only Converse and Reebok which was in place. So definitely for Indians, Reebok was like the thing to actually look forward to.
Right. Well, I know that in order for us to distribute in India, we had to have a partner who was Indian. So you had to have a national partner. And I think the first thing, the people I dealt with at first was the Armitage brothers, Vijay and Ashok. They
Okay.
wanted to do the distribution. But I think distribution really came in after I had left. I know we were talking with Ashok and Vijay, and they would have been our partners. Whether they eventually ended up as partners, I don't know. But
Okay.
as I say, at that time, I was probably at the point of leaving the company and retiring. But
Sure.
it's brilliant that Reebok should do so well in all markets. I didn't manage to get to India. I managed to get to a lot of countries and put people like Japan, Australia, all the European companies. I got the distribution in there. And in fact, what we do today, I travel around Europe when we don't have COVID. I travel around Europe and I meet up with friends in France, Germany, Italy, Switzerland, and we just meet up and we talk about those good times, those brilliant times when Reebok was growing. But you know, it's easy to be happy when a brand is growing, and I think you're under pressure when you've got to make it grow. And they're under pressure. We did the very heavy lifting in those early days, trying to get the Reebok brand to grow. But once it got growing, you know, we had 10, 15 years of just, well, we were being pulled along. The brand, you didn't need to sell the brand. The brand was had just struck home. Everything had happened. And so that was brilliant. Now, the opportunity now is to get back to those days. There's a bit more heavy lifting to do now. There's a bit more positioning to do to get the brand accepted. But it has some great products, as we've been saying, the Pump Fury, and there are a number of products now which are cult. They just,
the classics are back, yeah.
Yes, they just want them. So the opportunity is there. I think the opportunity has not gone away. So the opportunity is there to rebuild this brand. And there's so much material. And I'm available. Yeah, if anybody wants me, I'm available to talk to people and talk about the good days and the difficult days.
Sure. So I think we've talked a lot about Reebok, and definitely for people you know, who want to study more about Reebok, they can just Google around. But I think it's more about you also this time. So if I have to ask, what does a regular day in the life of Joe Foster looks like today? I'm sure that's not something that anyone knows.
No, but for the last few months, and you did mention about Google it out. Now that's the reason I wrote the book, because Google, Wikipedia, they got it wrong. They got it so wrong, and so the book is the one. I write the book because the book starts off with my grandfather and his grandfather, and it goes through the story. So, you know, in a sense, that's the book, and it's not from Google. It's from reading the book now. Maybe Google will pick up on the book and get it right. My last, well, actually, almost 2 years. The book has been in the writing for 7 years, and it's been a process of writing, rewriting, taking advice and saying no. You know, you don't need to do that. Those are all things that people don't want to hear about. And so for the last 2 years, a lot of my life has been taken up by the book. And it's on every day. I mean, right now we have 2 interviews a day, usually, all week.
Sure.
So that takes up time. But with it being COVID, what else can you do? You know, so there's nothing else to do. However, what my life would be like without the book and without COVID, again, what we do, we travel. And, you know, the people all through Europe, I will spend some time in Germany, some time down in France and in Italy. And we meet up with friends. Most of them are still around. And we meet up with friends and we talk about the old times. So it's good. It's just, and I get to America, get to see the Reebok archive. We're very close with the Reebok archive. If there's anything they need to know, they will ask the questions. So, you know, in my life, yes. And here in France, we might spend a few months just because it's quiet. There's hardly anybody where we are. And it's a bit like the English Lake District with beautiful roads, and there's no traffic on the roads. So we can drive around and we can enjoy that. And, you know, we can stop at a nice restaurant and eat a nice meal. But then we're on the road again, and we'll go and meet up with a Jean-Marc or Umberto, who's in Italy, and Richard, who's in Germany. And these people, Rudy, who's in Switzerland, and they're nice places. The south of Germany is beautiful, and Switzerland is beautiful. So, you know, nice places to be. We can get down to the south of France, to the Côte d'Azur, and that is a gorgeous place to be and spend some time. It's also warmer than being in England. So travel is what we usually do, meeting up with friends and enjoying life.
Sure. Something that I'm personally really curious to know about is what are the other sneakers that you like to wear besides Reebok, if there are any? Because,
Um,
that's something that everyone wants to know, rather, I would say, not just me, everyone wants to know.
yeah. I don't need to wear other people's sneakers. There's only one set of sneakers that I wear, and that's Reebok, and I have plenty of good access to it, and I love them. They fit me very well. After all, we designed the last, and I tried the last, and this that fits me, so it's good. Excuse me. But what I do like, there's another company called Wolf and Shepherd, and
Okay.
it's a sort of thing that I might have done, which is to take the sneaker feel, but to build a street shoe. And so I like those shoes. If I am being dressed up, and these days not many people bother to get dressed, but
Yeah.
if I do want a nice street shoe, a nice leather soft street shoe, that they've built it with some cushioning, lightness, and design that is that mix in between being a sneaker or being a street shoe. The only problem with anything like that is having people know that you're making it. They're in America, they're in New York, and they're in Los Angeles, so they have a good position for improving their brand. But that brand is a nice brand. You can put them on, and they're comfortable. I do remember many street shoes. You put a street shoe on, and it will not bend. It's stiff, and by the time you've got it worn in, it's almost worn out.
Yeah.
I know we had that attitude about tennis shoes because Reebok brought in the first very comfortable tennis shoes. In fact, I think the biggest thing that Reebok did was to bring in soft leather, really soft leather that made the shoes very comfortable. And that's one of the big things that did. Everybody else has followed, and it's good.
Yeah.
But I mean, we're not the only one to be creative. Adidas were very creative. And so Nike are very creative, and they have this new shoe now with this big cushion that will help you run a marathon in less than 2 hours. So,
Yeah.
but
That was
um,
pretty controversial. Yeah.
yeah, but when it comes to wearing Reebok, I love Reebok, and I I have no reason to buy another shoe.
Sure. Yeah. So, this just another thing that I would like to know. Like, definitely, as you know, like, Adidas has made its own, different sort of a brand with Yeezys, and definitely, Nike always had the Jordan brand in place. Uh, Reebok definitely, did initiate all those stuff with Iversons and the Shaq Norses and everything, but we did not see anything as a brand emerging out of Reebok, which was, under a label of any specific artist or a sports person. So, what do you think about that?
About sports people,
Yeah, just an entire brand emerging out of, a personality or someone like that. Like Kanye West initiated the Yeezys with Adidas and the Jordan brand being in place with Nike.
well, yes, I mean, we're talking about how do you build the brand really, and I think that the one thing that I would have liked to have done was to set up a football academy in the United Kingdom. I think
Okay.
that should have happened, and if that had have happened, because you look at the big brands of today, and if you look at America, they have the brands that sort of take care of the three major sports over there: American football, basketball, baseball.
Yeah.
You know, those are the ones. But those, funnily enough, those brands or those sports are not really global. They,
Yeah.
they do go outside of America, but the one global sport is football, or the Americans
Yeah.
like to call it soccer. And
Soccer.
yeah, and the two companies that are at the top now, both in over $20 billion in sales, those companies are the companies that really run the football. They're the ones that look at football to be the biggest influence that they can have. And, and I think that to really get somewhere, you have to, I don't think it's a secret. I just think that you can't go around building companies any other way. I think you've got to look at the major sports, and the major sport being football or soccer. I think that's the one, and that's so expensive to get into now because the two at the top are really
Yep.
holding on tight. Other companies, we see other companies, they do sponsor the odd team or two. but not the big teams. The big teams are now sponsored by Adidas and Puma. Reebok were in there. Reebok did have sponsorship of Liverpool and some big teams. So where that went wrong, I don't know. But to get to that size, you would need to be in football. That's my view. However, things are changing. Technology is changing. And I'm pretty sure that with the changing of technology, there's going to be a lot of companies that can really come up. I think Gymshark is a company which has grown very rapidly.
It's an exponential place.
Yes. And from what I gather, they've grown by taking on people in the fitness, really leaders of fitness, people who bodybuild, and taking them to gymnasiums and sort of inviting people in, and they'll put on a session in the gym, and people come on. Plus, they will also sell in the gym. So, they're built by actually going into the gyms and selling. They have recognized their consumer. The consumer are the people who go to the gym, and they have built it that way. And now, of course, with the internet, it spreads out, and you see these guys who are bodybuilders, women who are also bodybuilders, and if you're influenced in that way, then that's how they built their company, and it's come along very quickly. Adidas have tried to put Reebok in that position, but I think if you were trying to do that, what they should have done for Reebok is to own the gyms. They should have bought the gyms and called them Reebok gyms. That would give you the visibility. You need the visibility for the brand. Once you take it off the main street and you take Reebok away, nobody sees the name. So people just tend to forget about it unless you're keen. But of course, you need to be keen to do that.
So yeah, before we wrap up, of course, like it's been quite some time that we've been chatting over. Before we definitely wrap up, we have our book in place, The Shoemaker. Of course, it's written by you. What was the idea behind when you started, initiating this whole writing spree for the book, and why now? That's like more important question.
Why now? Well, as I say, we've slightly touched on this earlier. Why now is that I think Reebok really needed something to help them along. Here's the name. This is what happened to Reebok. A lot of the stories, which, as we say, Wikipedia and Google are wrong, and I wanted to put that right. And a lot of people had asked me for many years, why don't you write your story? Why don't you write it down? But, I hadn't been really that interested. But when I did sit down about 7 years ago and thought, well, why not? I will try this. And then you start to put some sort of things down. This is what happened. And I remember this happened. I just went that. And the memories start to come back. And also when you start working on it, you think, well, how did you manage to do that? How did you get through that? We didn't have computers. We didn't have mobile phones. I had to go out either in the car or it was in an airplane and fly places. So things have changed now. So my story is relevant for, we'll say, half of the 20th century, how we did it. And I don't think the problems are any different. I think the opportunities are different. And I think what you can do with it is different. So writing the book was something to do, something to put the word right. And in particular, since Reebok had sort of lost a bit of its visibility, the only thing that people could pick up on for Reebok was on Wikipedia and Google, and the fact that it was wrong. Most people thought, if they even bothered, most people thought that J.W. Foster's, we'd just taken J.W. Foster's, that was our company, and we just changed the name. But as you know from reading the book, there was a lot more to family problems. My father and my uncle, they just didn't get on together, just like Adi Dassler and Rudy Dassler did not get on together. They were fighting with each other, and so the company stagnated. Rudy Dassler left, so they were fighting each other's company. that allowed them to grow. Whereas the Foster company, they were just fighting each other, which meant they were going nowhere. And we couldn't get them to change, so we had to leave. And we left, and like I said, the story we've gone through, we set up Reebok. And it's been interesting. It's been something to do. And of course, it gives me this next bit of an ambition, and that is to get it to #1. Let's get the book, make it #1. As that would be interesting, because if we did get it to #1, I think that would be a real help for Reebok.
That's definitely going to happen. There's no other reason why it should not get to #1. I think everyone should read that, and it's inspiring enough. And more than anything else, it's a story of a brand, reaching the heights, where anyone and everyone would aspire to be, I think. And it's a story of success in the end of at the end of the day. But it's more sort of like people always want to reach at the top, but they got to know how you actually reach the top, right? So that's I think that's one way to probably learn more about it. And it's obviously going to be all factual, unlike, as you just rightly said, that Google and Wikipedia's, they don't really have the facts in place.
No, they don't.
So yeah, so definitely, like this is one way for all of us to probably know more about one of the best, probably the best brands that we've had in the whole sneaker world.
Good. Well, that's very kind of you to say that, and I am to agree, by the way. Yes, it's also a family book. It takes the family. My grandfather, his grandfather, his grandfather was called Sam Foster. My grandfather, Joe Foster. I was born on his birthday, 18 months after he had died. So it kept the lineage, and it takes us now. So it takes us through 125 years of a family which ended up as a business, which was a #1 in the world. And that's great. Okay, it slipped a bit. No reason why we couldn't get back again. Enough determined people, and we could get it back again. Brilliant.
Sure, for sure. So the book's definitely gonna reach the #1. That's something that we really hope, and we think that it's gonna. There's no other reason it should not. So thank you so very much for doing this. So this really means a lot to me, to the brand, and to pretty much everyone who's probably over here and who's eventually gonna watch this live once we post it ahead. There were a lot of comments, there were a lot of reshares happening, and there was a lot of love that everyone showed while we announced that we're gonna have Sir Joe Foster with us. And thank you so very much for doing it.
It's been a pleasure, an absolute pleasure, and I do hope the sales go well, and I hope you continue with your business, and that goes very well as well.
Thank you so very much. So this really means a lot. This definitely means a lot.
Okay, thank you very much then.
Thank you. Cheers, sir. Hopefully we can connect again soon and maybe talk more about it.
We should keep connected. I'm sure Julie will do that. Yes.
For sure. I have the mails, and I know for we can connect over there. Thank you so very much, sir.
Right. Thank you then, and goodbye. Bye-bye.
Right. Take care, sir. Bye-bye.
And that goes live or dead or whatever.
So yeah, guys, that was Sir Joe Foster. Thank you so very much for joining in. We are about to hit the 1 hour mark, so this is just gonna get disconnected. Thank you so very much for joining in, and hopefully we can get more crazier and more legends of people over here at the live. And yeah, thank you so very much for everyone who was over here, and we're gonna post it. Share this across as much as possible, because you don't get to see and you don't get to interact with these sorts of legends every now and then. So yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you so very much. Thank you so very much to everyone who joined in, and take care, stay safe. Good night. Yeah, good night.